Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Raven's Readings. I do these readings twice a week from various classics. If you subscribe to my free Substack newsletter at ravensview.substack.com, you'll get notified of the next episode and can leave your comments or suggestions. And you can also check out there my flash fiction writings or musings on the world. I will be reading to you from Very Good Jeeves. It's a collection of short stories written by P.G. Wodehouse in 1930. Jeeves, a very competent valet, and his hapless employer Bertie Wooster were characters in dozens of short stories by Wodehouse. The stories are told from the point of view of Bertie. This is the last story in this collection, so if you have any suggestions for the next Olden Days book, let me know. Maybe Treasure Island? Tuppy changes his mind. "What ho, Jeeves," I said, entering the room where he waded knee-deep in suitcases and shirts and winter suitings, like a beast among the rocks. "Packing?" "Yes, sir," replied the honest fellow, for there are no secrets between us. "Pack on," I said approvingly. "Pack on, Jeeves. Pack with care. Pack in the presence of the passenger." And I rather fancy I added the words tra-la, for I was in a merry mood. Every year, starting about the middle of November, there's a good deal of anxiety and apprehension among owners of the better class of country houses throughout England as to who will get Bertie Wooster's patronage for the Christmas holidays. It may be one, or it may be another. As my Aunt Delia says, you never know where the blow will fall. This year, however, I had decided early. It couldn't have been later than November 10th when a sigh of relief went up from a dozen stately homes that it became known that the short straw had been drawn by Sir Reginald Witherspoon, Bart, of Bleaching Court, Upper Bleaching, Hants. In coming to the decision to give this Witherspoon my custom, I had been actuated by several reasons, not counting the fact that, having married Aunt Delia's husband's younger sister, Catherine, he is by way of being sort of an uncle of mine. In the first place, the Bart does one extraordinarily well, both browsing and sluicing being above criticism. Then again, his stables always contain something worth riding, which is a consideration. And thirdly, there is no danger of getting lugged into a party of amateur waits and having to tramp the countryside in the rain singing, "When shepherds watch their flocks by night," or for that matter of that, "Noel, Noel." All these things counted with me, but what really drew me to Bleaching Court like a magnet was the knowledge that young Tuppy Glossop would be among those present. I feel sure that I have told you before about this black-hearted bird, but I will give you the strength of it once again, just to keep the record straight. He was the fellow, if you remember, who, ignoring a lifelong friendship in the course of which he had frequently eaten my bread and salt, bet me one night at the Drones that I wouldn't swing myself across the swimming bath by the ropes and rings, and then, with almost inconceivable treachery, went and looped back the last ring, causing me to drop into the fluid and ruin one of the nattiest suits of dress clothes in London. To execute a fitting vengeance on this bloke had been the ruling passion of my life ever since. "You are bearing in mind, Jeeves," I said, "that the fact that Mr. Glossop will be at Bleaching?" "Yes, sir." "And consequently are not forgetting to put in the giant squirt?" "No, sir." "Nor the luminous rabbit?" "No, sir." "Well, good. I am rather pinning my faith on that luminous rabbit, Jeeves. I hear excellent reports of it on all sides. You wind it up and put it in somebody's room in the night watches, and it shines in the dark and jumps about, making odd squeaking noises. The whole performance being, I should imagine, well calculated to scare young Tuppy into a decline." "Very possibly, sir." "And should that fail, there is always the giant squirt. We must leave no stone unturned to put it across the man somehow," I said. "The Wooster honor is at stake." I would have spoken further on this subject, but just then the front doorbell buzzed. "I'll answer it," I said. "I expect it's Aunt Dahlia. She phoned that you would be calling this morning." It was not Aunt Delia. It was a telegraph boy with a telegram. I opened it, read it, and carried it back to the bedroom, the brow a bit knitted. "Jeeves," I said, "a rummy communication has arrived from Mr. Glossop." "Indeed, sir." "I will read it to you. Handed in at upper bleaching. Message runs as follows: When you come tomorrow, bring my football boots. Also, if humanly possible, Irish Water Spaniel. Urgent regards, Tuppy." What do you make of that, Jeeves? "As I interpret the document, sir, Mr. Glossop wishes you, when you come tomorrow, to bring us football boots. Also, if humanly possible, an Irish Water Spaniel. He hints that the matter is urgent and sends his regards." Yes, that's how I read it, too. But why football boots? "Perhaps Mr. Glossop wishes to play football, sir." I considered this. "Yes," I said, "that may be the solution. But why would a man staying peacefully at a country house suddenly develop a craving to play football?" "I could not say, sir." "And why an Irish Water Spaniel?" "There again I fear I can hazard no conjecture, sir." "And what is an Irish Water Spaniel?" "A water spaniel of a variety bred in Ireland, sir." "Oh, you think so?" "Yes, sir." "Well, perhaps you're right. But why should I toil about the place collecting dogs, of whatever nationality, for young Tuppy? Does he think I'm Santa Claus? Is he under the impression that my feelings towards him after that Drones Club incident are those of kindly benevolence? Irish Water Spaniels, indeed. Pshaw!" "Sir?" "Pshaw, Jeeves." "Very good, sir." The front doorbell buzzed again. "Our busy morning, Jeeves." "Yes, sir." "All right, I'll go." This time it was Aunt Dahlia. She charged in with the air of a woman with something on her mind, giving tongue, in fact, while actually on the very doormat. "Bertie," she boomed, in that ringing voice of hers which cracks window panes and upsets vases, "I've come about that young hound Glossop." "It's quite all right, Aunt Delia," I replied soothingly. "I have the situation well in hand. The giant squirt and the luminous rabbit are even now being packed." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, "and I don't for a moment suppose you do either. But if you feel kindly stop gibbering for a moment, I'll tell you what I mean. I have had the most disturbing letter from Catherine about this reptile. Of course I haven't breathed a word of it to Angela, or she'd hit the ceiling." This Angela is Aunt Dahlia's daughter. She and young Tuppy are generally supposed to be more or less engaged, though nothing definitely morning posted yet. "Why?" I said. "Why what?" "Why would Angela hit the ceiling?" "Well, wouldn't you," she said, "if you were practically engaged to a fiend in human shape, and someone told you he had gone off to the country and was flirting with a dog girl?" "With a, what was that once again?" "A dog girl. One of those dashed open-air flappers in thick boots and tailor-made tweeds who infest the royal districts and go about the place followed by a pack of assorted dogs? I used to be one of them myself in my younger days, so I know how dangerous they are. Her name is Dalglish. Old Colonel Daglish's daughter. They live near Bleaching." I saw a gleam of daylight. Then that must be what his telegram was about. He's just wired asking me to bring down an Irish Water Spaniel. A Christmas present for this girl, no doubt. "Probably," she said. "Catherine tells me he seems to be infatuated with her. She says he follows her about like one of her dogs, looking like a tame cat and bleating like a sheep." "Oh, quite the private zoo, what?" "Bertie," said Aunt Dahlia, and I could see her generous nature was stirred to its depths. "One more crack like that out of you, and I shall forget that I am an aunt and hand you one." I became soothing. I gave her the old oil. "I shouldn't worry," I said. "There's probably nothing in it. Whole thing, no doubt, very much exaggerated." "You think so, eh? Well, you know what he's like. You remember the trouble we had when he ran after that singing woman?" I recollected the case. You will find it elsewhere in the archives. Cora Bellinger was the female's name. She was studying for opera, and young Tuppy thought highly of her. Fortunately, however, she punched him in the eye during Beefy Bingham's clean, bright entertainment in Bermondsey East, and love died. Besides, said Aunt Delia, there's something I haven't told you. Just before he went to bleaching, he and Angela quarreled. Well, they did? Yes, I got it out of Angela this morning. She was crying her eyes out, poor angel. It was something about her last hat. As far as I could gather, he told her it made her look like a Pekingese, and she told him she never wanted to see him again in this world or the next, and he said right-ho and breezed off. I see what has happened, she continued. This dog girl has caught him on the rebound, and unless something is done quick, anything may happen. So place the facts before Jeeves and tell him to take action the moment you get down there. I am always a little piqued, if you know what I mean, at this assumption on the relative's part that Jeeves is so dashed essential on these occasions. My manner, therefore, as I replied, was a bit on the crisp side. Jeeves's services will not be required, I said. I can handle this business. The program which I have laid out will be quite sufficient to take young Tuppy's mind off love-making. It is my intention to insert the luminous rabbit in his room at the first opportunity that presents itself. The luminous rabbit shines in the dark and jumps about making odd squeaking noises. It will sound to young Tuppy like the voice of conscience, and I anticipate that a single treatment will make him retire into a nursing home for a couple of weeks, at the end of which period he will have forgotten all about the Bally girl. Bertie, said Aunt Delia with a sort of frozen calm, you are an abysmal chump. Listen to me. It's simply because I am fond of you and have influence with the lunacy commissioners that you weren't put in a padded cell years ago. Bungle this business and I withdraw my protection. Can't you understand that this thing is far too serious for any fooling about? Angela's whole happiness is at stake. Do as I tell you, and put it up to Jeeves. Just as you say, Aunt Delia, I said stiffly. Yes, all right then. Do it now. I went back to the bedroom. Jeeves, I said, and I did not trouble to conceal my chagrin. You need not pack the luminous rabbit. Very good, sir. Nor the giant squirt. Very good, sir. They have been subjected to destructive criticism, and the zest is gone. Oh, and Jeeves? Sir, Mrs. Travers wishes you, on arriving at Bleaching Court, to disentangle Mr. Glossop from a dog girl. Very good, sir. I will attend to the matter, and will do my best to give his satisfaction. That Aunt Delia had not exaggerated the perilous nature of the situation was made clear to me on the following afternoon. Jeeves and I drove down to Bleaching in the two-seater, and we were tooling along about halfway between the village and the court when suddenly there appeared ahead of us a sea of dogs, and in the middle of it young Tuppy frisking round one of those largest corn-fed girls. He was bending toward her in a devout sort of way, and even at a considerable distance I could see that his ears were pink. His attitude, in short, was unmistakably that of a man endeavoring to push a good thing along, and when I came closer and noted that the girl wore tailor-made tweeds and thick boots, I had no further doubts. You observe, Jeeves, I said in a low, significant voice. Yes, sir. The girl, what? Yes, sir. I tootled amiably on the horn and yodeled a bit, and they turned. Tuppy, I fancied, not any too pleased. Oh, hello, Bertie, he said. Hello, I said. My friend Bertie Wooster, said Tuppy to the girl, in what seemed to me rather an apologetic manner. You know, as if he would have preferred to hush me up. Hello, said the girl. Hello, I said. Hello, Jeeves, said Tuppy. Good afternoon, sir, said Jeeves. There was a somewhat constrained silence. Well, goodbye, Bertie, said young Tuppy. You'll be wanting to push along, I expect. We Woosters can take a hint as well as the next man. See you later, I said. Oh, rather, said Tuppy. I set the machinery in motion again, and we rolled off. Sinister, Jeeves, I said. You noticed that the subject was looking like a stuffed frog? Yes, sir. And gave no indication of wanting us to stop and join the party? No, sir. I think Aunt Dahlia's fears are justified. The thing seems serious. Yes, sir. Well, strain the brain, Jeeves. Very good, sir. It wasn't till I was dressing for dinner that night that I saw young Tuppy again. He trickled in just as I was arranging the tie. "Hello," I said. "Hello," said Tuppy. Who was the girl?" I asked in that casual, sneaky way of mine. Offhand, I mean. "A Miss Dalgliesh," said Tuppy, and I noticed that he blushed a spot. "Staying here?" "No, she lives in that house just before you come to the gates of this place. Did you bring my football boots?" "Yes, Jeeves has got them somewhere." "And the water spaniel?" "Sorry, no water spaniel." "Dashed nuisance. She set her heart on an Irish water spaniel." "Well, what do you care?" "I wanted to give her one." "Why?" Tuppy became a trifle haughty, frigid, the rebuking eye. "Colonel and Mrs. Dalgliesh," he said, "have been very kind to me since I got here. They have entertained me. I naturally wish to make some return for their hospitality. I don't want them to look upon me as one of those ill-mannered young modern men who read about in the papers, who grab everything they can lay their hooks on and never buy back. If people ask you to lunch and tea and what not, they appreciate it if you make them some little present in return. Well, give them your football boots. In passing, why did you want the bally things?" "I'm playing in a match next Thursday." "Down here?" "Yes. Upper Bleaching versus Hockley-cum-Meston. Apparently it's the big game of the year." "How did you get roped in?" "I happened to mention in the course of conversation the other day that when in London I generally turn out on Saturdays for the old Austinians, and Mrs. Dalgliesh seemed rather keen that I should help the village." "Which village?" "Upper Bleaching, of course." "Ah, then you're going to play for Hockley?" "You needn't be funny, Bertie. You may not know it, but I am a pretty hot stuff on the football field." "Oh, Jeeves." "Sir," said Jeeves, entering right center. "Mr. Wooster tells me you have my football boots?" "Yes, sir. I have placed them in your room." Thanks. Jeeves, do you want to make a bit of money?" "Yes, sir." "Then put a trifle on Upper Bleaching for the annual encounter with Hockley-cum-Meston next Thursday," said Tuppy, exiting with swelling bosom. "Mr. Glossop's going to play on Thursday," I explained as the door closed. "So I was informed in the servants' hall, sir." "Oh, and what's the general feeling there about it?" "The impression, I gather, sir, was that the servants' hall considered Mr. Glossop ill-advised." "Why's that?" "I am informed by Mr. Mulready, Sir Reginald's butter, sir, that this contest differs in some respects from the ordinary football game. Owing to the fact that there has existed for many years considerable animus between the two villages, the struggle is conducted, it appears, on somewhat looser and more primitive lines than is usually the case when two teams meet in friendly rivalry. The primary object of the players, I am given to understand, is not so much to score points as to inflict violence." "Good Lord, Jeeves." "Such appears to be the case, sir. The game is one that would have a great interest for the antiquarian. It was played first in the reign of King Henry VIII, when it lasted from noon till sundown over an area covering several square miles. 7 deaths resulted on that occasion." "7? Not inclusive of 2 of these spectators, sir. In recent years, however, the casualties appear to have been confined to broken limbs and other minor injuries. The opinion of the servants' hall is that it would be more judicious on Mr. Glossop's part were he refrain from mixing himself up in the affair." I was more or less aghast. I mean to say, while I had made it my mission in life to get back at young Tuppy for that business at the Drones, there still remained certain faint vestiges, if vestiges is the word I want, of the old friendship and esteem. Besides, there are limits to one's thirst for vengeance. Deep as my resentment was for that ghastly outrage he had perpetrated on me, I had no wish to see him toddle unsuspiciously into the arena and get chewed up by wild villagers. A Tuppy scared stiff by a luminous rabbit? Yes, excellent business. The happy ending, in fact. But a Tuppy carried off on a stretcher in half a dozen pieces? No. Quite a different matter. All wrong. Not to be considered for a moment. Obviously, then a kindly word of warning, while there was yet time, was indicated. I buzzed off to his room forthwith and found him toying dreamily with the football boots. I put him in possession of the facts. What you had better do, and the servants' hall thinks the same, I said, is fake a sprained ankle on the eve of the match. He looked at me in an odd sort of way. You suggest that when Miss Dalglish is trusting me, relying on me, looking forward with eager girlish enthusiasm to seeing me help her village on to victory, I should let her down with a thud? I was pleased with his ready intelligence. That's the idea, I said. Pho, said Tuppy, the only time I've ever heard the word. What do you mean, pho? I asked. Bertie, said Tuppy, what you tell me merely makes me all the keener for the fray. A warm game is what I want. I welcome this sporting spirit on the part of the opposition. I shall enjoy a spot of roughness. It will enable me to give my best. Do you realize, said young Tuppy, vermilion to the gills, that she will be looking on? And do you know how that will make me feel? It will make me feel like some knight of old jousting under the eyes of his lady. Do you suppose that Sir Lancelot or Sir Galahad, when there was a tourney scheduled for the following Thursday, went and pretended they had sprained their ankles just because the thing was likely to be a bit rough? Well, I said, don't forget that in the reign of King Henry VIII, never mind about the reign of King Henry VIII. All I care about is that it's Upper Bleaching's turn this year to play in colors, so I shall wear my old Austinian shirt, light blue, Bertie, with broad orange stripes. I shall look like something, I tell you. Yeah, but what? Bertie, said Tuppy, now becoming purely gaga, I may as well tell you that I'm in love at last. This is the real thing. I have found my mate. All my life I have dreamed of meeting some sweet open-air girl with all the glory of the English countryside in her eyes, and I have found her. How different she is, Bertie, from these hothouse, artificial London girls. Would they stand in the mud on a winter afternoon watching a football match? Would they know what to give an Alsatian for fits? Would they tramp 10 miles a day across the fields and come back fresh as paint? No. Well, why should they, I said. Bertie, I'm staking everything on this game on Thursday. At the moment, I have an idea that she looks on me as something of a weakling, simply because I got a blister on my foot the other afternoon and had to take the bus back from Hockley. But when she sees me going through the rustic opposition like a devouring flame, will that make her think a bit? Will that open her eyes? What? What? I said what? So did I. I meant, won't it? Oh, rather. Here the dinner gong sounded, not before I was ready for it. Judicious inquiries during the next couple of days convinced me that the servants' hall at Bleaching Court, in advancing the suggestion that young Tuppy, born and bred in the gentler atmosphere of the metropolis, would do well to keep out of local disputes and avoid the football field on which these were to be settled, had not spoken idly. It had weighed its words and said the sensible thing. Feeling between the two villages undoubtedly ran high, as they say. You know how it is in these remote rural districts. Life tends at times to get a bit slow. There's nothing much to do in the long winter evenings but listen to the radio and brood on what a tick your neighbor is. You find yourself remembering how Farmer Giles did you down over the sale of your pig, and Farmer Giles finds himself remembering that it was your son Ernest who bunged the half-brick at his horse on the second Sunday before Septuagesima, and so on and so forth. How this particular feud had started, I don't know, but the season of peace and goodwill found it in full blast. The only topic of conversation in Upper Bleaching was Thursday's game, and the citizenry seemed to be looking forward to it in a spirit that can only be described as ghoulish. And it was the same in Hockley-cum-Meston. I paid a visit to Hockley-cum-Meston on the Wednesday, being rather anxious to take a look at the inhabitants and see how formidable they were. I was shocked to observe that practically every second male might have been the village blacksmith's big brother. The muscles on their brawny arms were obviously strong as iron bands, and the way the company at the Green Pig, where I looked in incognito for a spot of beer, talked about the forthcoming sporting contest was enough to chill the blood of anyone who had a pal who proposed to fling himself into the fray. It sounded rather like Attila and a few of his Huns sketching out their next campaign. I went back to Jeeves with my mind made up. Jeeves, I said, you, who had the job of drying and pressing these dress clothes of mine, are aware that I have suffered much at young Tuppy Glossop's hands. By rights, I suppose, I ought to be welcoming the fact that the wrath of heaven is now hovering over him in this dreadful manner. But the view I take of it is that heaven looks like overdoing it. Heaven's idea of a fitting retribution is not mine. In my most unrestrained moments, I never wanted the poor blighter assassinated. And the idea in Huckley-cum-Meston seems to be that a good opportunity has arisen to make a bumper Christmas for the local undertaker. There was a fellow with red hair at the Green Pig this afternoon who might have been the undertaker's partner, the way he talked. We must act, and speedily, Jeeves. We must put a bit of a jerk in it and save young Tuppy in spite of himself. What course would you advocate, sir? I'll tell you. He refuses to do the sensible thing and slide out because the girl will be watching the game and he imagines, poor lizard, that he's going to shine and impress her. So we must employ guile. You must go up to London today, Jeeves, and tomorrow morning you will send a telegram, signed Angela, which will run as follows. Jot it down. Ready? Yes, sir. So sorry, I pondered. What would a girl say, Jeeves, who, having had a row with the bird she was practically engaged to, because he told her she looked like a Pekingese in her new hat, want to extend the olive branch? So sorry I was cross, sir, would I fancy be the expression. Strong enough, do you think? Possibly the addition of the word darling would give the necessary verisimilitude, sir. Right? Resume the jotting. So sorry I was cross, darling. No, wait, Jeeves. Scratch that out. I see where we have gone off the rails. I see where we are missing a chance to make this the real Tabasco. Sign the telegram, not Angela, but Travers. Very good, sir. Or rather, Delia Travers. And this is the body of the communication. Please return at once. Immediately would be more economical, sir. Only one word, and it has a stronger ring. True, jot on then. Please return immediately. Angela in a hell of a state. I would suggest seriously ill, sir. Well, all right. Seriously ill. Angela seriously ill. Keeps calling for you and says you were quite right about hat. If I may suggest, sir. Well, go ahead. I fancy the following would meet the case. Please return immediately. Angela seriously ill. High fever and delirium. Keeps calling your name piteously and saying something about a hat and that you were quite right. Please catch earliest possible train. Delia Travers. Well, that sounds all right. Yes, sir. You like that piteously? You don't think incessantly? No, sir. Piteously is the mot juste. All right, you know. Well, send it off in time to get here at 2:30. Yes, sir. 2:30, Jeeves. You see the devilish cunning? No, sir. I will tell you. If the telegram arrived earlier, he would get it before the game. By 2:30, however, he will have started for the grounds. I shall hand it to him the moment there is a lull in the battle. By that time he will have begun to get some idea of what a football match between Upper Bleaching and Hockley-cum-Meston is like, and the thing ought to work like magic. I can't imagine anyone who has been sporting a while but those thugs I saw yesterday not welcoming any excuse to call it a day. You follow me? Yes, sir. Very good, Jeeves. Very good, sir. End of episode. This seems a foolproof plan, but do we need to worry that Bertie still might fumble the ball? Just a reminder, If you subscribe to my free newsletter at ravensview.substack.com, you'll get notified of my updates as soon as they're ready. Plus, you can browse the various short stories and musings I have in there. If you enjoyed this reading or have other classics you'd like to hear, do leave me a comment. Check out my other posts on my Substack, and remember to share this with your friends. Ta-ta for now.